The desert wind carried the scent of dust and sorrow when she rode into the valley. A lone Apache woman on a fading mare, her face half hidden beneath a worn hat, her eyes holding the weight of 1,000 miles and a lifetime of rejection. Every town she passed had thrown stones, not words, at her name. No one trusts an Apache, they whispered, as if her blood itself was a crime. But hunger had brought her here, to a ranch whose fences stretched into the dying light, where smoke from the chimney meant warmth and maybe, just maybe, mercy. She dismounted slowly, her hands trembling, as she clutched the small bundle of herbs and cornbread she'd bartered. For the night before, a shadow moved on the porch, a tall rancher, with a jaw carved from silence and eyes, that had seen too much war to believe in kindness anymore. When he spoke, his voice was firm, almost harsh, as if he'd forgotten how to talk to someone who wasn't his cattle. "State your business," he said, his hand still resting near the holster. She lifted her gaze, steady and proud, despite the fear clawing inside her. "No one trusts an Apache, sir," she whispered. "But I can cook." The words hung between them like a fragile thread in the cold air. For a heartbeat he said nothing, only studied her face, the bruised courage, the hunger for a chance. Then, almost reluctantly, he nodded toward the back door. "The kitchen's that way. Don't touch my guns." That was the beginning, the moment a starving Apache woman crossed the invisible line between survival and something close to hope. Inside the ranch house, the warmth stung her skin like fire. The kitchen was old, the stove rusted, the floor worn thin by years of footsteps that had long since faded. But to her it was a palace. She washed her hands with trembling fingers, her mind echoing the voices of those who told her she'd never belong anywhere. As she cooked bread, beans, and coffee, the scent filled the house and somehow softened the edges of the rancher's silence. He sat at the table, his eyes following her every move, not with desire, but with a man's wary curiosity for something he didn't understand. She served him quietly, standing aside like a shadow. But when he took the first bite, the stillness in the room shifted. "You did this?" he asked. She nodded once. "Yes, sir." He didn't answer, only ate in silence until his plate was empty. Then he said, "You can stay tonight in the barn." She smiled faintly, the first real smile in years, and whispered, "Thank you, sir." Outside, the moon hung low over the ranch, silver and solemn, watching two broken souls share the same roof for the first time. That night, as she lay on the hay, she remembered her mother's words. "A kind gesture can grow roots in even the coldest soil," and for the first time in a long while she believed it. But she didn't know that the man whose kindness she was silently thanking had lost his wife to an Apache raid years ago, and that the ghosts of that night still lived behind his every glance. In the dark, he sat by the window, the flicker of the oil lamp casting shadows across his scars, wondering why the sound of her quiet humming from the barn made the night less lonely. He didn't trust her. He didn't trust anyone. Yet something about her presence, humble and unbroken, stirred the faint echo of a heart he thought was gone. Days turned into weeks. She worked without asking, cooking, cleaning, tending to the horses. The hands at the ranch didn't like her. They called her names, spat near her feet, but she never fought back. Instead, she let her kindness speak louder than her bloodline. The rancher watched it all, the patience, the grace, the silent strength, and began to see the truth. She wasn't what the world said she was. One cold morning, a blizzard swept through the valley. The cattle were trapped in the lower pasture, and he rode out alone to save them, leaving her by the fire. But when he didn't return by dusk, she saddled his horse and followed the storm. The wind tore at her face. The snow stung her skin, but she rode on, guided by something stronger than fear. She found him half buried in snow, his horse dead beside him. Without hesitation, she dragged him back to the ranch, her hands bleeding, her body frozen, her spirit unbroken. All night she fought to save him, feeding the fire, wrapping his wounds, whispering words in Apache, old prayers of protection her mother once sang. When morning came, he woke to her face leaning over him, eyes filled with exhaustion and care. "Why'd you do it?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. She smiled softly. Because someone once told me kindness can melt even the hardest heart. He looked away, unable to speak, because something inside him had already begun to melt. As the sun rose over the frozen ranch, its light fell on her face, and for the first time, he saw her not as an Apache, but as a woman, strong, kind, and carrying a heart braver than his own. And in that light, the gesture he made next, simple, quiet, and full of unspoken gratitude, would begin to change both their lives forever.